Today, BRR Media speaks with Fiona Crosbie. She heads up the National Competition and Consumer Law Group at Allens Arthur Robinson in Sydney. Welcome to BRR Media, Fiona.
Thank you, David.
Fiona, can you just start off by telling us about the Corporate Counsel survey that the firm conducts each year?
Sure. Well, about 7 years ago, we started running a Corporate Counsel series of seminars, and we tried to find topics that we thought would be of greatest interest to Corporate Counsel. And then it occurred to us, of course, that the best way of doing that was in fact to ask Corporate Counsel, and so we started running these surveys, and we've been doing them for several years now.
Well, what are the main issues that the survey found was front of mind for Corporate Counsel?
Well, it's interesting, David. There are some favourite topics that seem to appear year in, year out, and then there are some new issues of concern to Corporate Counsel. And I think that part of the issue is that we have a government with a pretty ambitious reform agenda, and that means there's a lot of new legislation around, and Corporate Counsel are concerned to get across it all. And so the big issues that we found coming back in our survey was the new personal property securities legislation, harmonisation of the occupational health and safety legislation, Australian consumer law, that was significant, and then a lot of the topics that come up every year that Corporate Counsel want to hear about. So ethical issues in leadership within organisations, legal professional privilege, and what have you.
Well, it also seems that Corporate Counsel are facing enormous pressures to keep pace with the reform and the changes that are going on. Is that correct?
I think that is correct, and I think it's getting tougher because we have a Commonwealth government with a very ambitious reform agenda, and in a sense Corporate Counsel don't have the luxury of being able to hide behind a specialisation. They really are expected to be across the breadth of legislative developments.
Another issue of note seems to be legal professional privilege. Can you just tell us what the survey found on that?
Well, that was interesting as well. People continue to want to receive an update on the law relating to legal professional privilege, and that's because it's particularly important to in-house counsel. The issue, as you know, with legal professional privilege is often in what capacity was a document created, and if someone within an organisation created it in their capacity as an independent provider of legal advice, that's one thing, but often Corporate Counsel have dual roles and perform a commercial role, and that raises a question as to whether privilege attaches to the documents they create. So we find Corporate Counsel constantly wanting an update on that issue, and the issue becomes more complex when they're involved in cross-border transaction, because then the laws of other countries relating to privilege come into play as well. So we will be talking about that in the series.
Well, absolutely. Well, some great insights, and thank you again for your time today, Fiona.
My pleasure.
That was Fiona Crosbie, heading up the Competition and Consumer Law Group for the firm, speaking with us today on BRR Media.